New Hope TV, your encounter with God.
Welcome again. I am now going to part 2, and I'm going to share from the scripture on the book of Revelation, chapter 2, verse 8 onwards. It says, "To the angel of the church in Symrna write, this thing says the first and the last, who was dead and came to life. I know your works, tribulation and poverty, but you are rich. And I know the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews and are not, but a synagogue of Satan. Do not fear any of those things which you are about to suffer. Indeed, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested in tribulation 10 days. But be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. He who overcomes shall not be hurt by the second death." Now, the church of Symrna is an interesting church. The word Symrna means myrrh. Myrrh, when you crush it, it becomes very bitter. And you imagine tasting such bitterness in your life. Symrna went through a life of persecution. The scripture says she was poor, afflicted, and in tribulation. That is a prophetic timeline. From the year 100 to 312 is the prophetic age of Symrna. And during this period, a lot of things happen to this church and to the believers. Christ comes and says, he says to the angel of the church of Symrna, he says, "I am he who was dead and came to life." The thing that he's trying to tell the church in Symrna, do not be afraid of death. I have gone through it. I have seen the other side, and came back alive. But he says, I know, he says that you will go through tribulation, that you will suffer. And then he says, I know your works, that you are poor, that you are poverty. And he says one more thing. I know the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews that are not, but a synagogue of Satan. What happened now, church, is that the Jews were quite prominent in Symrna. In Symrna, because most of the Jews who became Christians are from this Jewish community, and it displeased them a lot. So the Jews became informers. They began to tell the authorities. And they were saying about this new group of people who are not following the ways of Judaism, that they are following a new cult, a new heresy. And then the Roman emperor came and ordered that all these people should be arrested. Christ says that, he says, I know that you're going through. Satan's about to throw some of you into prison. You will suffer for 10 days. You'll be in prison for 10 days. Now you've got to understand something. Though 10 days is a short period, but there came a period during the Roman Empire involving 10 emperors who went all out to destroy the infant church of Christ. During this period, many died. They say that more than 50 million perished during this period. And one of the emperors was Domitian. He was an emperor from 81 to 96. He was the one who exiled John to the island of Patmos. He was also a very cruel and wicked emperor. But the worst of the emperor was Diocletian, the last emperor. What he did was, he went all out hunting for every saint. Wherever they were hiding, in the forests, in the caves, he dragged them back. He hid them, he held them beheaded. Some he put on boiling oil, burned them. Others he put on wet leather, strapped tight, and left them in the sun. And as the sun burned, the skin began to contract, and their bones began to crack and crush them. Others he crucified. Most of them he sent where bees ate most of them. But the funniest thing about this Emperor Diocletian, even his wife and daughter became a Christian. They found Christ, and salvation to Jesus Christ. Symrna went through this terrible period. Imagine, it's a church that suffered so much. Just take a look of all the saints that we have, the Christians, the leaders, especially the apostles. How many of them were alive? All of them died. None of them were alive except for John in the island of Patmos. In this particular place, I'm going to show you how each of them died, what manner of death came upon them. Firstly, you take John. John was the only one that survived, even though he was exiled to the island of Patmos. Stephen was stoned by an angry mob. Can you imagine? They were not taking small stones, but they were taking boulders, big rocks, and they smashed him and crushed him to death. Matthew was said that he was stabbed to death in Persia by an angry mob. Mark died. They had all his limbs, his legs, both legs and hands strapped to 4 horses, and they ripped him apart. What about Luke, the author of the Gospel of Luke and Acts? They said that he was hanged cruelly. Peter, Philip, and Simon was crucified individually on a cross. Bartholomew, the disciple of Christ, was skinned alive by the heathens. Whereas Thomas died in Chennai, in Tamil Nadu itself, in India, as 5 horses pulled his body apart. The apostle James was beheaded by King Herod. Leaving who? Little James, one of Christ's disciples too. He said he was cut in half by a sharp sword. James, the brother of the Lord, was stoned to death. Another one called Judas was tied to a pillar and shot by arrows. Matthias had his head cut off in Jerusalem. And our Paul was beheaded under Emperor Nero. Millions died for the Lord. Even in this century, in our time, it will be recorded that 300,000 die as martyrs for the Lord. That shows that, the price that he paid. I heard a story about how in 1948, before communist China fall into communist hands, China, there was 500 graduates from a university accepted Christ. They were, 16, 17 years old. Few months later, the communists came in. And they brought this 500 and told them whether you join the Communist Party or you're going to follow any other religion. 300 left. And they went back to the world. 200 stood steadfast. They didn't want to give up their faith, even though they were young Christians. They were willing to pay a price. You know what happened? After 3 months, all was called out into the public area. And then the official asked him, will you deny Christ? They brought a young 17-year-old girl who came from a wealthy family in Beijing. She said, look, I know one thing, that Jesus Christ is real and that the Bible is even more real. When she said that, this official ordered one of the soldiers and he took a sword and slashed the head. After that, one after another, they knew they could deny, but they knew that eternity beckons them. All were chopped to death. Look at their faith, church. Because they know that, suffering for Christ, they have to suffer. There's Thames and there's a seminary in church even today. Many of our brethren in this nation as well as other parts of the world are suffering for our Jesus. But what about us? What about us? He says, He told them, be faithful unto death, and I'll give you the crown of life. He will give each one of them this wonderful crown of life because of faithfulness. Now, there are other crowns of reward for you, waiting for you. Now, if you run the race and finish it, an incorruptible crown is waiting for you. That is called the victor's crown. Now, as the crown of life is called the martyr's crown. Another crown that Christ will give is called the elder's crown. Those who serve the Lord as pastors, as they serve the Lord in the ministry, He gives them the elder's crown. Another crown that Christ will give is called the crown of righteousness. This is the time. We know anytime now Christ is coming back. Are you waiting for His coming? Are you desiring that He comes and takes you home? Are you waiting for the rapture to take place? And if that is the case, God promised you a crown. This is called the crown of righteousness. Those who love is appearing. And finally, there's another wonderful crown to those who are soul winners. The soul winners, you are, every single one who bears the name of Christ is asked to go forth and win souls. And he who wins souls, there is a crown waiting for them. And it is called the soul winner's crown. Finally, He says, he who overcomes will not be hurt by the second death. Church, we are the most privileged people ever. We know that today, if we die, we will go to heaven. We'll escape even the terrible thing called eternal death. To the others who do not know Christ, they face an eternity without Christ, a Christless eternity. What are we going to do about that, church? You and I are responsible. You are and I are called the light and salt of the earth. It is through our evangelism, it is through our testimony and witness, the world sees Christ in us, and we win the world back to Him who loved us. He says, I am He who lives and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. He has tasted death for us. When you go forth and be a witness to Him, to glorify Him forever and ever. The church of Symrna is a church of suffering. They suffered for 200 years non-stop. Yet the church began to strive because they knew that they must stay close and faithful. I will now stop here, and next week I'll continue on the third church. Part 3 will be the third church called the Church of Pergamos. At the same time, same place. Thank you.
The greatest sacrifice, Jesus Christ. The Prince of Peace, the Father of compassion, the Redeemer of mankind, brings new hope into your life. New Hope TV, your encounter with God.